My name's Amata, and in this Red Gaming Tech video I'm here with the latest from the gaming and tech world in the last 24 or so hours. So what do I have for you? Well, we're going to kick things off with a very interesting report from the Belgium Gaming Commission regarding loot boxes. Then we're going to move on to Nvidia with a couple of pieces from them, the first of which is going to be how they have brought in an obscene amount of cash for the first quarter of their fiscal year 2019. Then we're going to move over to how they are apparently expecting a massive drop in GPU sales to cryptocurrency miners. Then we're going to move over to Valve, who are ponying up some serious cash to hackers who help them report Steam security flaws. Then we're going to finish things up with a new PPI LCD which is being designed for VR, which we might see in the new PlayStation VR. But as I said, we're going to kick things off with Belgium. So you undoubtedly saw the report last month from them, which basically stated after they investigated a few games, Overwatch, CSGO and a few others, that loot boxes were indeed gambling. But they're not content to just go that far, as they are now recommending criminal prosecution should be initiated. And basically what's going to happen is that the Minister of Justice, Cohen Geens, is going to meet with industry stakeholders in order to discuss the issue. Now this is all based on a report from gi.biz, and of course there will be a link in the description below this video to their article. I highly recommend that you give it a read. And I've got a bit of a statement here from the BGC director, Peter Nasons, who said, quote, "We are going to take all preparatory measures for the drafting of police reports, but it's not going to be tomorrow. There is a certain amount of time for the Minister of Justice, but it's not unlimited." Now, let me just be clear, they are not only coming to the table with, yep, we think developers should be prosecuted. That's not obviously the only recommendation they are bringing. They also have, for example, the suggestion for specific permits for video games that have loot boxes, and obviously having a special classification or marking on the cases for them. There's also a suggestion that there should be age verification when purchasing gift cards or codes, and naturally a ban on minors being able to purchase games featuring loot boxes, and of course, in their minds, gambling. Now one of the last things they also recommend, I definitely agree with, which is basically a clear indication of winning odds provided to the customer, or the player in this case, should I say. Which I definitely think we do need, because, you know, I'm sure that even if that was there, people would still be willing to pony up for a few loot boxes or whatever to get that cool skin that they want. So I definitely think that more information to the customer is always going to be good. And they're also suggesting a spending limit. So they have a few suggestions that they're bringing to the table, but one of them is that there should be criminal prosecution put into place. So obviously, as they have defined by their law that loot boxes are gambling at the moment, the games that feature them in the current state that they're in are going against Belgian gambling law. So what I think they're trying to do here is, obviously they're trying to start a discussion thanks to Cohen Geens and the industry stakeholders that he's going to be discussing this with, but I think they're also trying to show that they're not messing around, that they are bringing their full weight behind this. They're not threatening exactly, but I think they are saying, look, we are not just gonna take it to court. We're not gonna we're not playing nice. We are going to pursue this as much as we possibly can, and just show that they do want something done. And we may or may not see something done quicker than we might expect, or it might take ages, as I fully expect it to. But I expected the investigations into loot boxes to take a while, and they weren't exactly quick. They weren't done in 5 minutes or anything, but they were a lot quicker than I expected. So I might be surprised. Perhaps they can reach some sort of agreement sooner than I would expect, but I would imagine that developers are going to be taking this quite seriously for obvious reasons, because even without the criminal prosecution thing, it's pretty clear that Belgium feel that in the current state loot boxes are not going to be acceptable within their country. So it obviously could have very far-reaching ramifications indeed, because if you're going to make all these changes, put the stats there for people to see, that sort of thing, then we might see that implemented elsewhere in order to avoid this sort of messiness in other areas. But of course that's pure speculation, but I definitely think this is going to have a far-reaching effect when it is actually put into place, and obviously what effect that is depends on the decision and the results that Cohen Geens and the stakeholders do reach after the discussion. But of course it's hard to say until then, so we can only wait and see, but this is definitely going to be interesting to watch. So let's move on to Nvidia and their obscene Scrooge McDuck level of cash. So basically they have published numbers for their fiscal Q1 2019. Yes, I know fiscal years are weird, don't start with me. But they have pulled in a record revenue of 3.21 billion. And to put that number in some kind of perspective, that is a rise of 66% compared to last year. In terms of actual profit, which of course is the more important one, they pulled in $1.3 billion. So not exactly something you find down the back of the sofa. And that is in itself a jump of 134%. And we also saw gross margins increase 2.6 percentage points to 64.5%. Now, unsurprisingly, the largest piece of this huge amount of cash was made by the GPU segment, which by itself made 2.77 billion, which also increased 77% year on year. And in terms of gaming specifically, that accounted for half of that, as it brought in $1.7 billion, which is an increase of 68% from year over year. However, we also saw similarly impressive increases in the data center side of things, with a 71% year-on-year growth to $700 million in revenue, thanks to things like DGX and Tesla and so on. And we also saw a not too shabby $251 million made in professional visualization, which is once again increasing by 22%. And according to Nvidia, OEM sales totaled $289 million, which also rose 148% thanks to, quote, GPUs for cryptocurrency mining. So obviously there are questions as to why we have seen such a huge increase in all these areas, especially in the gaming segment. Now, in terms of gaming specifically, Nvidia does attribute this to the popularity of esports games, Battle Royale style games, and of course the general increase in interest in PC gaming, which of course is doing rather well for itself at the moment. But undoubtedly, there is definitely a large role played by cryptocurrency mining, because not only have of course GPUs been selling like hotcakes that are good for mining, because of the interest in that, as we have all painfully witnessed and gone through over the last few months, GPU prices have been nothing short of crazy and have been way too expensive for most people. Obviously that is finally relieved, and we're finally now seeing GPUs around the MSRP, which is just so nice to see after seeing them, you know, doubled or sometimes tripled in price depending on the GPU. But undoubtedly over the last few months, as we have seen the demands increasing until finally we got some Ethereum ASICs and other such things, undoubtedly that has played a role in the success here. But I don't think you can blame it, or put it just, blame isn't really the right word, but you can't put it just on mining. But I do think the role that mining has played can't be overstated in the success that Nvidia has seen in Q1 2019. For the second quarter, however, Nvidia is expecting to bring in $3.1 billion in revenue, coupled with a 63.3% gross margin. But speaking of the future, let's move on to our second Nvidia segment, which is thanks to a report from Bloomberg. And according to their report, Nvidia is basically expecting cryptocurrency sales to drop around 2/3 in the current quarter. Now, of course, we should be aware that the shortage wasn't just due to mining. It was also, of course, due to the memory issues that have also been happening around the same time, because memory has also been insanely expensive due to demand. But Nvidia have admitted that cryptocurrency had a bigger impact last quarter than they expected. Now, there was a statement from Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang in a conference call who said, quote, "Crypto miners bought a lot of our GPUs in the quarter, and it drove prices up. I think a lot of gamers weren't able to buy into the new Geforce as a result." So obviously we just got done talking about the insane amount of cash Nvidia made, and a 2/3 drop is definitely a big deal. Now, of course, this is just an estimate from Nvidia, but obviously they've not made this estimate lightly. I'm sure they've looked at projections and past figures and blah 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 blah, all this other stuff. But of course it could be entirely wrong. It could be 1/3, you know, it could be 2%, it could be 50%, you know, we could be 80%. You know, I'm just throwing out numbers here. I'm just saying that this is a expectation or an estimate. It's not set in stone, of course, but if they are correct, it obviously means that they're going to see a significant drop in the amount of money they're making, but it also is going to mean that the current situation, the last few days where GPU prices have actually been reasonable, should hopefully be sticking around, and will hopefully mean that whatever Nvidia is bringing to the table next, you know, 1180, 2080, whatever it ends up being called, will actually be available for slightly less than a human kidney. So, let's move on to Valve. So basically what they're doing here is offering bounties on security flaws in their services with cash rewards for people who come forward with vulnerabilities identified. These cover Steam, Valve-owned web domains, Valve games, and any multiplayer and economy aspects to those games. Obviously this is not a first by any means in the world of tech. There are numerous companies that reward white hat hackers for reporting security flaws, and it's not exactly a small chunk of change. You know, obviously they are ranked based on severity. You can range from $200 to $2,000 for more severe vulnerabilities. And in the last few days, since the program has actually launched, over $100,000 in bounties have been paid out. So even if you say that each one of those was $2,000 worth of floor, or, you know, one floor at $2,000 per person, that isn't, or per floor should I say, that is an insane amount of floors that have been found in just a few days. So if you fancy yourself a white hat hacker, then there's a link in the description below this video to the HackerOne board where you can report such flaws. So let's move on to our final topic for today, which is regarding the PPI LCD. Now this has been made by Japan Display Inc., who are a manufacturer of small and medium-sized LTPS LCD panels, and they have announced the development of a 3.25-inch LTPS TFT LCD panel, which has been designed specifically for VR applications. So we're going to have 1001 pixels per inch, or PPI, which is an upgrade from the 803 PPI that they talked about last year. It's going to have higher resolution, the panel will be smaller, and it's going to have a higher refresh rate of 120 Hz versus 90 Hz, and also have better latency. They are expecting commercial shipments to begin by the end of March 2019, and they also said that they are hoping to accelerate the production of even higher resolution displays for both VR and HMD applications. So this could be the very panel that Sony is going to make use for whatever they're doing next with PlayStation VR. So of course, at the moment, the PlayStation VR is stuck at 386 PPI, so if they were to make use of this, that is of course an insane increase. So it wouldn't be unreasonable to expect that whenever we get the PlayStation 5 being announced, we could see also a new PlayStation VR come out around the same time. Probably not exactly the same time, because, you know, Sony aren't mad, but I think they'll definitely have it launched around the same sort of time with huge improvements made to the technology. And obviously the LCD is only one part of that. You're also good talking about the technology inside the device, but this is definitely going to help things along, and it's showing a impressive increase versus the current generation of what Sony has to offer. So that is me done for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Your support is highly appreciated. Do remember to like and subscribe and click that bell icon, and if you'd be so kind, give us a look-see over at patreon.com/redgamingtech. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye bye.